Alright, so now having done High Queen Khalida for the Tomb Kings, we're going to move into another Tomb King Legendary Lord. A lot of you guys have voiced that you're really enjoying this kind of foray into the Tomb Kings before we ever get anything announced by them. Still waiting on that full announcement of when this is going to happen. You know, we knew Mortal Empires is coming at the end of October or so. They're saying a couple of weeks away. We don't know exactly when Tomb Kings would be released. It'd be so cool to get an October release, just because kind of thematic with Halloween, but we know that's not coming. So today I want to go into Prince Apophis, the Cursed Scarab Lord. He has a lot of really cool characteristics, and he reminds me of a very special someone. I'll go into that at the end of it, but we'll do the same little thing we're going to typically do. We'll read the lore blurb for Prince Apophis, and then we will go into his actual special rules and what I think his application would be like in Total War Warhammer 2. So, Prince Apophis, the Cursed Scarab Lord. Apophis was a jealous prince who lusted after the throne of Numas. To this end, he slit the throats of the entire royal line while they slept and proclaimed himself king. However, the people of Numas rebelled against him, and those loyal to the murdered king broke into the throne room and dragged the usurper to the temples to be judged. Of all the crimes in Nehekara, the most terrible was regicide. Typically, those who attempted to seize the throne were denied the privilege of mummification, and their bones were thrown into the carrions of the desert. Denied access to the lands of the honored dead, these unfortunates were consigned, at best, to the torturous depths of the Nehekaran underworld, or at worst, to utter oblivion. Apophis' crimes warranted a more severe punishment. He was entombed alive within a sarcophagus filled with flesh-eating scarabs. It is said that his death screams could be heard through the temple walls, but when the lid was opened, there was no trace of the beetles. All that remained was a skull picked clean of flesh. Before this was thrown into the deep desert, it was inscribed with a single magical hieroglyph, cursing Apophis' soul for all eternity. Upon his death, Apophis' soul was claimed by Osirian, god of the underworld, to be tormented in perpetuity for his crimes. However, being of noble birth, Apophis was able to strike a bargain with Osirian, promising that in exchange for his release, he would claim for the god a soul to stand in his stead, a perfect match for his own. Osirian agreed, and thus Apophis was reborn as the Cursed Scarab Lord. Apophis appears from a swarm of beetles that flow up from the ground until they reveal a black swathed figure in their midst. Apophis is not a reanimated corpse, but a desert revenant whose body is formed with a writhing swarm of scarabs. Atop his undulating mass, his skull looks upon the world in search of his chosen victim, the soul he believes that can buy his freedom. In Apophis' hand is the same blade he used to slit the throats of his family, and it drips with their blood to this day. Only by slaying the perfect soul with this weapon can Apophis hope to earn his freedom. The scarabs making up Apophis' form scuttle over rubble and through gaps and ruins without impediment. Apophis' body can even burst apart in an explosion of chitinous wings flying across the battlefield before reforming into the mocking semblance of a man. Apophis sweeps aside those that stand between him and his prey, and when he opens his jaw, a tide of insects erupts forth to drown his foes. No matter how hard his enemies swipe and hack at his horrifying form, insects' bodies flow over to fill open wounds and regrow lost limbs. Apophis is utterly implacable, and he will not stop until his victim lies dead at his hands. Apophis then binds his target's spirit in a mystical soul cage before returning to the depths of the underworld. Here the soul is placed on a pair of scales and compared with Apophis' own cursed spirit. However, the truth is that no two souls are ever equal, and the scales are never balanced. Though he doesn't know it, Apophis has doomed himself to roam the lands for eternity. So if you just kind of listen to that description of him, he kind of sounds like Imhotep from The Mummy. I mean, like, the whole portion of him just kind of being this giant desert revenant, this huge maw, just kind of consuming an early 1900s propeller plane, prop plane. But that's neither here nor there. But in Tabletop, to be totally honest, guys, Prince Apophis is very underwhelming. He's really used more of a kind of like a very niche assassin character. He's not great at going toe-to-toe with a ton of other units. He can't deal out the kind of damage that a Dark Elf assassin can, or that a Skaven assassin can. Or, I mean, if we're going to compare apples to apples, that the Shadowblade of the Dark Elves or of Deathmaster Snikch of the Skaven can really dish out. Although he does kind of have that role, and especially in this description, it does kind of create that. So his special rules are Entombed Beneath the Sands, Fly, Nehekaran Undead, Regeneration, Strider, and Terror. So he's obviously going to be a little bit more of a morale linchpin, I guess you could say. But he does have the same kind of aspect that a lot of the other legendary lords have, where they do explode if you kill him. He's got these scarab. He's called the Scarab Prince, as we see here. But the lore describes him as having, being comprised from these scarabs. So if he dies, these scarabs do damage around him. So it kind of has like a little explosion mechanic that we've talked about with High Queen Khalida as well. But he does have a breath weapon that he uses that we've talked about here in the lore. And also, again, like Imhotep, just jaw drops to the ground and all these little buzzards and flies and scarabs fly out of his mouth. Like, whoa. But it'd be cool to see a mechanic kind of like that. If we had him as a Scarab Prince, we already kind of see it with Noxious Breath from the Skaven Greyseers or from Lord Skrolk. But to see him like that, that'd be pretty interesting indeed. But he also has a Desert Revenant ability, so he can't actually be the general. So he'd be almost like a hero class. And I think that that's something that we have to start seeing in Total War Warhammer 2. We see so many of these legendary lords and these really cool legendary lords across all these races, but we don't see any legendary heroes. And that is a big thing in the tabletop. There are a lot of legendary heroes. When you look at the special characters, there's typically anywhere from 5 to 7, and 2 or 3 of them are more often than not actual heroes. In fact, this guy, we can tell, is a hero. I mean, Shadowblade is a hero. That's why we have assassins as heroes. And Deathmaster Snikch, I actually can't recall if he can be the general or not, but there is a lot of that in these armies. And it's a great way for Creative Assembly, in my mind, to add a little flavor to their game with, okay, yeah, we've got all these really cool legendary lords, but maybe you've got a generic lord with a legendary hero in his unit, so that way he can benefit from that. And it gets a great way to kind of add some diversity without kind of putting all your ducks in one basket or eggs in one hen. Or, you know what, I'm not from the farmlands, so I don't really understand pastoral allegories, but still, analogies and whatnot, it applies here. But even then, you could even have a legendary lord with a legendary hero and a legendary army. But the way I would really see him interpreted into a Total War arena, if he were to make him a lord, he would have to have maybe ethereal or something like that. In Tabletop, his stat line is quite rubbish. He's got 4 weapon skill, which equates to his melee attack in Total War Warhammer be equivalent to Chaos Warriors with shields, just hand weapons. The same weapon skill is equivalent to this guy right here. So they have the same amount of melee attack, which is likelihood to hit. And they're very weak. He's very weak as far as toughness goes. He's got a lot of wounds, so he's got a lot of hit points, effective hit points, but he's got really low initiative. So things that attack him get to attack him first. So he has a chance of just being killed outright before even doing anything. But he does have an ability called Soul Reaper, which means that he can reroll any failed to hit and to wound rolls against one character he chooses at the very beginning of the combat. And the way that really works is, we kind of see that with Wulfric, how he has the ability to vastly reduce a target's armor and everything like that. It could be something like that as well. Maybe this increases his weapon strength and weapon melee attack, so he actually becomes a real true assassin, but it only is a burst style ability. It's not something that he can just always have on, always just be this marauding duelist like you can with say a Tyrion, or say you can with like a Queek. So I'd be interested to see how they do that, if they do that, because in all honesty here, Prince Apophis is one of those characters I just don't really see as a actual character making it into the game, because he is a Tomb Prince and he is a hero, and we've seen how so far how Creative Assembly has dealt with those. But I'd love to see kind of like this ethereal counting, so some physical resistance, lord kind of roving in and out of the sands and like coughing up scarabs and insects and sand grit and everything like that. I think it'd be a really cool kind of thematic lord for an army. And I think as a whole, the inclusion of Tomb Kings are going to be a very crazy army, in the sense that they're going to have a lot of really weird mechanics to deal with the fact that they are just simply skeletons. They're just nothing but skeletons. I mean, you do have your constructs and stuff like that from all the larger things like Ushaptis and their Phoenix, or their Sphinxes, or Sphinxi. But I think that there's going to need to be a lot of flavor with their lords, just like you get with Skaven. There's a lot of flavor with their lords because their rank and file is so terrible when it comes to being stalwart in that battle for a prolonged period of time. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this on Prince Apophis here. If you have any other questions about him, or you want to know more about the lore on him, I pretty much said everything from the book, but maybe there's something you want to know more, feel free to ask in the comments. Or if you have a request for the next Lord, let me know. I'm just kind of choosing the ones I think would be best to either get out of the way or do. Cetra is, of course, on the list. He might be last, but he's on that list as well. But thanks for watching here today, guys. Have a good one. We've got some more lore videos coming out. We've got one on the Great Catastrophe on Valaya down the road. We're doing a campaign tips video. All sorts of goodies planned for you guys. But thanks for watching. Have a good one and take care.